catch up. Yeah, the presentation, the webinar is going to be recorded, so you can watch it back anytime. It will be available on YouTube, and you will also receive it after the webinar ended. Let's see what we're going to cover today. So we will start with introductions. Then my colleagues Paul and Alexander will cover the program structure and content with some research examples as well. Then I will finish the webinar with practicalities such as the admission requirements, some student profiles, and what can you do with your degree after graduation. So just to start with the introductions, my name is Katica, and I'm a marketing and communications officer at IHS. I will be the moderator during this webinar, and Mihaela, my colleague, will be present in the chat. So if you have any questions during the presentation, please just write them in the chat, and we will have a question and answer session at the end to answer all your questions. So yeah, let's start with the introduction of my colleagues. Paul?
Hello, everyone. Nice to meet you, even though we can't see you. So this scary looking character, that's me on the picture. I'm one of the coordinators of the Urban Environment, Sustainability and Climate Change track next year. My own background is actually in political science and especially in land governance. So that's what I've been teaching for a number of years here. And my personal teaching and research interest is actually in how land governance impacts climate-related environment and climate-related topics, and vice versa. So in the interaction, we could say, between land and climate. So my research interests are urban land governance, integration of our land policies, and how this impacts natural resources and water. So land use policies for socioeconomic, environmental, and climate adaptation objectives, and also in this concept of transformational resilience. In other words, can we achieve resilience that is more longer term? And in asking this question, we also run into justice questions. So this whole concept of justice is a very interesting one to research. And I'm very interested in landscape approaches, not just the urban, but when we talk about the environment, it's very difficult to limit yourself just to the city boundaries. So I'm interested in the landscape approach. And now my colleague Alexander will explain his profile.
Yes, I'm Alexander Loss. I did a PhD about clouds and climate. So I have an exact science background, and I'm interested especially in the sustainability aspects and environmental aspects of an urban environment with respect to climate change. And within climate change, I'm specialized in urban air quality, emissions, and urban heat island effects. And besides the technical research topics, I'm also interested in sustainability transition theory and multi-level perspective. I'm also a co-coordinator, by the way, of the specialization track. Let me introduce our UESC team members, Urban Environmental Sustainability and Climate Change track team members. Besides Paul and myself, we have Elena Enseñado, who is an expert in climate change and environmental planning, ecosystem services, and nature-based solutions. Then Dr. Alberto Gianoli is expert in urban environment and infrastructure, climate change adaptation and mitigation, especially resilience, and project infrastructure finance. Then Laura Quadros Aniche is an expert in nature-based solutions. She focuses her research on nature-based solution, ecosystem services, climate adaptation, resilience, and urban living labs. And our colleague, Dr. Tian Qi, expert in flood risk management, numerical modeling, and nature-based solutions in the context of climate change and flood risks. Dr. Peter Scholten is a governance and sustainability expert with a background in social and political sciences of the environment.
And there's another member of the land team, we could say, Charm Nerkua. Charm is interested and works on socioeconomic aspects of sustainability, and her specialty is nature-based solutions. Next slide, please.
Now we come to the master track. And some details about the master track, this specialization.
I see there's another poll. Sorry, Katica, do you want us to read the question out loud?
Yes, so you probably saw that we have these polls during the webinar, so you can also talk to us via these polls. This poll is about how familiar you are with the master track. Before we dive in to the content of the master track, it's always good for us to see if you already know about IHS and this specific master track, or you're not familiar with it at all. But I see that it's very equal between the three answers. So then we can cover the whole content, I think.
Yes, so let's talk about the content and of the master track, the Urban Environmental Sustainability Climate Change Master Track. So we start from 4 pillars. Those will cover all the important topics and methods and everything you need to know to be able to manage sustainable cities in the future. So we have the theories and the concept pillar, which includes theories about climate change, the risk analysis, hazard vulnerability, exposure to nature or weather extremes, for instance. And then it goes also into the definition of urban sustainability and resilience, climate mitigation, and sustainable transformation. Then analysis and assessment pillar will focus especially on the interrelationship and the dependencies or relationships between climate change, water, land, air, heat, ecosystems, even energy transition, including other urgencies like greenhouse gas emissions and so on. So there are strong interrelationships that we look especially into, also via the transition and multi-level perspective analysis. The third pillar is about applications and practice. So after having talked about theories and methods to analyze and assess the situation, we want to give you also a good knowledge of practices and how people apply these theories. That's by doing flood risk and management, air pollution management, but also spatial planning for adaptation, and of course, nature-based solutions and ecosystem services that can provide interesting intersectoral solutions to those problems, including land and water management and governance. Last but not least, the methodologies and the tools. So those things refer to the skills that we want to help to build up during our specialization so that you can apply the theories in a more efficient way. So that's transition pathway analysis, mapping and assessing ecosystem services, land use classification, including, for instance, GIS technologies or tools, methods, and also vulnerability assessment, practical decision-making, and so on. Data analytics, of course.
And maybe I should add that under applications and practice, one of the components that we'll be introducing in a moment is a final advisory assignment. So students in this track will receive a lot of theory, which will help give them the content underpinning their knowledge, but we will also apply this, you will also apply this knowledge, and that will be in the form of a final advisory assignment. And we'll come back to that in a few moments. Katica, next slide, please.
Okay, so let me give you some examples or special topics and of attention that we want to list here to give you a better insight into the content, how you can get more knowledge about it. So, for instance, we'll teach you how to learn. We teach you the climate change risks, the learning practices and methods to do that. So, and also how to understand and evaluate sustainable urban transitions. That's quite a complex theory. So we also talk about complexity in the course and the program. So third, you will also learn how to look at sustainability from a social, economic, and governance angle. So intersectoral, interdisciplinary. Then again, as mentioned before us in the pillars, so we also want you to be able to apply theory. So therefore, we look into these nature-based solutions to increase social and environmental resilience and also justice, for instance. Then designing adaptation resilience concepts and strategies. That's another topic that we look into in more details during the course. So last but not least, also the skills will be then covered more specifically, for instance, by looking into the time series analysis methods, or the skills or the tools how to make these analysis, or the GIS methods and techniques. And of course, it's interesting because we are also involved in research projects actively and also in advisory projects at our institute. So your thesis research can also be linked to ongoing research projects and real life problems.
Next slide, please, Katica. So this slide gives you a sense of the indicative content blocks that we will be covering. So we will start the track with setting a framework, and these frameworks will relate to the need for transformation in our approach. And transformation implies the need to really transform the way we do business, and that business refers to the way we plan, the way we use land, the way we use natural resources such as water, because all of these have an impact on the climate. So we will start with a framework for transformation. That's we could say the goalpost, and the transition as a process to sustainable development, because in the end, that's what we're talking about here. Alexander, maybe you want to talk about a second indicative block, which is about climatologies.
Yes, we refer to climatologies by the location-dependent climate specialities. So the climate zones, for instance, to start with a simple example, but also then looking into specific problems like heat, drought, air pollution, or energy transition, which is related to greenhouse gas emissions. And that's also related to the climate conditions in certain areas in the world.
Yeah, so you
continue with water.
You could see that there's two more layers: water, land. We could say air is also a layer in a way. Two more important layers when we're talking about the climate and our impact on it. One is water, and another is land. We've portrayed them here as two separate layers, but of course there are lots of interrelationships between all three: air, water, and land. But just for simplicity's sake, we could say that when we look at water, we have to be cognizant of the water cycle. You will be modeling water use, behavior, and supply availability in relation to climate. And again, we'll touch on floods and issues like drought. The two extremes, we could say. The land layer looks at land use, land governance. We'll come to the cross-cutting topics a bit later, but land governance is very important in relation to the climate. And we'll look at the impacts of land use on the climate and vice versa. And we'll look at IPCC reports informing about this relationship. And then the last content block is going to be the biggest, which will be, given all of these problems and the challenges that we face, what is the way forward? And here we will come back to the concept of transformation and the transition process. We will look at familiar concepts of adaptation and mitigation, and cross-cutting themes like ecosystem services, nature-based solutions, etc. And the next slide will give you a bit more.
Can you go back one slide, please? Yes, I would like to make an additional remark on this. So it's interesting when you see these blocks, they are much or directly related to all these drivers of climate change. So the drivers of the problem of changing climate are all included here: land, air, the climate, the greenhouse gas emissions. So it's all embedded in the climate change problem sphere. And then we look into these in particular, these subjects and domains. Next slide, please. Yeah.
So this is an illustration of the rough structure of the UESC track. So you see the content blocks that we just described on the left. And in the middle, you have cross-cutting themes. These are themes which will come back in each of the content blocks. They include the transformation perspectives, and we just mentioned the importance of having transformation as a goalpost. Resilience, and linked to this, the need for adaptation to increase our resilience and hopefully our transformational resilience for cities and urban communities. Linked to this is, of course, risk and risk assessment, being able to identify risk and be familiar with ways to mitigate this risk. Governance, you will look at the importance of governance throughout these content blocks, the role of institutions, what kinds of institutions and how they behave or not is very important in this whole track. And then a big subtopic, we could say, is nature-based solutions. This is, of course, gaining in importance. We prefer to use nature-based solutions instead of just pouring concrete, more and more concrete, in coming up with some physical and non-physical solutions to the problems of the climate. At the end of the track, and actually a few weeks leading up to it, we will have the final advisory assignment. And this is where you apply your knowledge to an assignment for a professional client. And maybe we jump to the next slide for this. Oh, okay, well, it's maybe the slide afterwards. Alexander, do you want to start with some of the study visits?
Yes, we also have some excursions, one-day excursions for you. The first one I want to talk about here is the Amsterdam Smart City project or excursion. It's actually also an activity, a project, and you will then see a specific area in Amsterdam, which was a former industrial terrain, which has been completely redeveloped into sustainable housing and industrial, no, let's say a mixed use area where a lot of experimentation can go on. And that's extremely important to learn and to go further with the sustainability transition than just the incremental improvements that we are usually doing.
Yeah, another site visit or study visit is to the city of Nijmegen in the east of the Netherlands. And this has been the place where we mentioned transformation before, where a big transformation is taking place in how we deal with water management and specifically river management. In the past, we used to engineer our landscapes, especially here in the Netherlands. We equated engineering solutions with safety, but now we know that sometimes nature needs to be helped to behave, let's say, in a natural, we need to help natural processes, and that can lead to long-term safety. So the Room for the River project in Nijmegen, actually it's a national project, but one of the sites that we will visit is in the city of Nijmegen. We will see how the concept of transformation has played out with water management.
There is another excursion in Rotterdam this time, Climate Proof Initiative, which is about climate adaptation, so risk reduction by walking along different routes in the municipality area of Rotterdam. You will encounter different projects and talk to these projects owners and initiatives in Rotterdam that leads to more climate resilience in the city. It's mostly related to nature-based solutions, this one.
And finally, we could say an example of a study visit will be in the form of your final advisory assignment. You and your colleagues will spend some time in the field, in the location of where the assignment will take place. So there will be lots of visits to the site as you build your strategies to present to the client. Next slide, please. So this final advisory project will be in the form of a transformational resilience strategy that you will be building, you and your fellow students. And it will be for professional client organization. We can say actually a coalition of organizations. And you will deliver a strategy which will be based on research in the field, broken down into different kinds of instruments to achieve the objectives that you will outline in your strategies. So this is a challenging assignment. It's a lot of fun. It's hard work. You will also provide a professional presentation. So this will also test your presentation techniques. And it'll be a direct application of theories, concepts, and instruments that we have covered in class.
Maybe it's worthwhile to say, because you put so much effort in this this project, it will also be an assignment, a graded assignment. So it's a group work assignment, and there will be other exams in different kinds of exams that will be taken during the specialization period.
Yeah. Next slide, Letizia.
So let me briefly mention some information resources we make use of to teach and to also to provide you with this information that is very useful also for your own thesis research, for instance. So of course we talk about the intergovernmental panel of climate change, the latest report which was given or released last year. Then the European Environmental Agency, sorry there is a typo here. We make use of the Copernicus services. This is a very interesting program started in Europe and which covers climate-related or provides climate-related information that's started actually by a very comprehensive satellite program. But in the meantime, it covers much more, not only satellite data, but all kind of required information to assess the status of climate. Then we also make use of scientific articles, peer-reviewed mostly, and other web-based services and environmental databases.
And last but not least, we should mention that a big source of information will be your own data that you produce and collect as part of your thesis research. And in the course of doing the advisory assignment, you will be collecting data yourselves. And you will use this data also in your, besides in the final advisory assignment, of course, you will also, some of you will also use it in your thesis research. You'll be coming up with original data, collecting empirical data for your final thesis. Next slide.
So we would like to give you some examples of recent thesis research titles. So let me just pick one or two. There is a thesis that was entitled First Mile, Last Mile, Accessibility and its Impact on Modal Share and Emerging Motorization Patterns. And this is in a study that has been performed in Kenya. That's the second topic. This was an interesting research because it addressed a very common problem in accessing public transport, but especially in this area, it is very informal. The public transport is actually not a formal service, it's an informal system. So it was very interesting to look into that relationship between how do you reach your bus stops and in this context. That was very interesting. And there is the next one, the effect of communal electricity autonomy on the inter-organizational relationship within the electricity system. It's a mouthful of words. It sounds a little bit, and probably you don't really understand it, but it was actually also about a really hot topic because the electricity system is actually undergoing a very fundamental change, and that shifts a lot of that has a strong effect on the landscape of this domain, this electricity and energy domain. So this was also a very interesting research. Maybe Paul, you can give another example.
Yeah, we're just picking out a few of these theses. Of course, we have hundreds of very interesting theses, but we just picked a number that show a selection of topics. I'll focus on the last two. Exploring access to water as a driver of land use dynamics in Kumasi, in Ghana. This was a group of students who did a project in collaboration with the Dutch Institute for Planning and the Built Environment, together with institutions in Ghana. They looked at the peri-urban areas around the secondary city of Kumasi and how land use dynamics and access to water influence each other, and how this impacts also urban growth. The last topic was, you remember I mentioned Room for the River in the Netherlands. One of our students produced a brilliant thesis exploring whether actually in our urban development, we actually make room for lahar and lava streams from volcanoes in cities that are growing around volcanoes, and there are quite a few in the world. So do our cities make room for potential disasters and catastrophes? And she did very interesting research in Ecuador for this. Next, please. So these last two slides, these are examples of some joint research that we have done with alumni, just to show you that once you graduate, a lot of students keep in touch with us and we do joint work together. One paper was on managing the water energy nexus within a climate context. Next slide was on Sponge City in China, the influence of Sponge City on property values in the city of Wuhan, where interesting work is taking place on the experimentation with the Sponge City, which is how to make cities more better able to absorb water, and whether making neighborhoods safer actually is reflected in property values, yes or no. So this student did some very interesting research with real estate development companies in Wuhan, in China.
Thank you, Paul and Alexander, for the content part. And now we will go to the practicalities. So first, I will show you around the year structure of the master program. So this master track is part of the master program of urban management and development. You can see here the year structure. So the year is made of 4 blocks, as you can see. The year starts in September and ends in August. In the first few months leading up to Christmas, you have block 1, that is around the 3 topics that you can see below. You will have these courses with the other master tracks, and next year it's going to be other 3 master tracks, and you will look at each of the topics from your own specializations perspective. So if you're choosing the environment master track, you will look at urban sustainability, urban governance, and finance from that aspect. After Christmas until April is the specialization period that's currently happening for this year's master students. So they have specified courses within their master tracks, and they will also have an action planning workshop in the upcoming months. And that's when you also get the introduction on how to write your thesis. You will get classes on writing a thesis proposal. And then from May to August is when you actually conduct your thesis research and write your thesis. So this is how the year is set up for this master course. Just a quick overview of the program. So as I mentioned, the course is from September to August 2023 to 2024. It's 12 months of courses, and the tuition fee is 15,600 euros. It is a flat rate tuition fee, so no matter where you come from, it's the same for all the students studying at IHS. You can see the 2 deadlines here. The early bird deadline is 16 April. So if you apply by 16 April and pay the tuition fee by 16 of May, then you will get a discount on the tuition fee, a €1,000 discount. And the regular application deadlines, as you can see, for non-EU and EEA candidates is 1 June, and EU and EEA candidates is 1 July. You can see the full program overview on the website. And we also have a scholarship and funding database that is featuring external scholarships on our website, specifically looking at the Orange Knowledge Scholarship. That is a specific scholarship for students from the Global South. And the application deadline is coming up for that at the end of February. So if you are from the Orange Knowledge Scholarship countries, we advise you to apply very soon. You can get more information on it on our database. And yeah, there's another question another poll for you, just so you can see what kind of funding options are you thinking of choosing. So yeah, I see scholarship is is one of the most popular ones. If you are not sure what kind of scholarships there are, feel free to take a look at our database on the website. And just a quick overview of the admission requirements. So the most important one is, of course, a good academic performance, lower, at least second class lower B or equivalent. We also really put a big emphasis on your ability to interact with and work with people from very diverse cultures. As Paul and Alexander already mentioned, we have students from all over the world. So it's very important that you can work with a lot of diverse people. You also need to have at least a bachelor's degree from a recognized university in the field related to urban management and development. This degree depends on the master track you're choosing, so it might be slightly different for the other master tracks than to the environment one. Of course, a sufficient command of English is also very important. This is an IELTS 6.5 score with at least 6 in all the sub-tests, or a TOEFL 90. And working experience is, of course, a plus, but we don't recommend it before. We don't. It's not a requirement specifically. And just to show you a bit of the students' profiles we had in the past years for this course, so you can see that we have a lot of different participants with different educational backgrounds and previous experience. You can also see the map on the right with the students, where we had students from for this master track. So you can see that we had people studying political sciences before, or geography, even civil engineering, for example. And we had people who were urban planners or even economists before joining the course. So it is a very interdisciplinary course, as Paul and Alexander mentioned, where we welcome people from all backgrounds. It's very interesting to see the different conversations between these professionals and how they look at the same topic from different angles. So we always try to have people from different places with different backgrounds so that we can have good conversations in the class.
Can I add something here, Katica, on student profiles? I would really like to encourage you to apply also if you have an unconventional background, let's say from the humanities. Some of my best students in the past have been historians or people with a law background or even a literature background. I mean, believe it or not, if you are working in a field, I think the key then is your work experience. If you're working in a field related to these topics, or if you have a strong affinity with these topics, even if your academic background is different, then don't hesitate, just contact us. And it's always fun to have a different background. I see here a chat message about meteorology. I would say we benefit from all this knowledge, you know, in the field. So don't let that be an obstacle.
Yes, if you're not sure about your academic background, you're always welcome to email us at admission@ihs.nl, and my colleagues will be happy to give you a personal assessment of your application. So you're always welcome to contact us if you're unsure about your background. And finally, a bit about after graduation. So you can see that we have a lot of alumni from a lot of countries. You will join 10,000 alumni around the world. Actually, they have smaller associations in several countries. So after graduation, if you go back to your home country, it's a possibility to meet up with other IHS students in your country. And you can see some examples of positions of the previous graduates. So some of them are consultants, some of them are engineering experts. And it's also important to mention that some people stay in the Netherlands and they find jobs here. But many of our students also go back to their home country so that they can apply the knowledge they gained at IHS in their home environment and help develop their own country. One thing I would like to mention is that our alumni, our students really work together with their professors. Recently, we had 2 students from the previous year who did a research in a neighborhood in Rotterdam with one of our academic, and they conducted a research on Carnice, which is a neighborhood in the south of Rotterdam, and how digital divides this neighborhood. And this research got really picked up, and we also had a guest lecture with these two students from last year, so that they talked about their research to our current students. So we always really welcome to work, even IHS.
And Katica, if I may add something. You mentioned here GIZ, the German Technical Assistance Agency. We had a very exciting project recently where we worked with our alumni on doing surveys in their own countries on how land value capture is used for resilience purposes. And we contacted alumni in about 10 different countries. This assignment was paid for by GIZ, OECD, and Lincoln Institute for Land Policy. And this was, I think, a great example of how we work with our alumni in many different ways, actually, after they graduate.
Yes, as we are an international research institute, we also conduct research and advisory projects in different countries. So after you finish at IHS, there's still a lot of possibilities to stay connected to us and work with us in the future. So we don't stop at just educating you in that sense. So now we reached the question and answer session. I will take a look at the chat and then we can start answering the questions. Let me see. Yes, I should take a look at the question and Q&A, I think. I don't see many questions.
There's a hand up from Hossein, I think.
Yes, I will unmute you and you can ask your question. Yes, I think you're on mute. No?
Okay.
Yes, now we hear you. Yes.
I am from Bangladesh, and my educational background is science, and I'm taking a diploma in electrical engineering from Bangladesh Technical Education Board and Bachelor of Arts from Bangladesh National University. Also 25 years experience in industrial electrical engineering. Am I eligible for this course enrollment?
Yes, Paul or Alexander, if you would like to answer.
Well, I would say eligible, of course. It sounds like your work experience is quite extensive. But I would say absolutely. We've had quite a few engineers in our program. The question to you maybe is what is the benefit for you of taking this course? Does it add value to the diplomas that you already have? But from our perspective, I think your insights and your work experience would be very valuable. Yes.
Thank you. I am very much happy.
Thank you. And we're excited to see your application. I also see another question from Priscilla. I have a BSc in Meteorology and Climate Science. Am I eligible? I think we covered this question during. So as Paul and Alexander said, we welcome students from many different backgrounds. So I would say just apply to us, and best of luck, and hope to see you at IHS next year.
I mean, if I can add here, this is hitting the bullet's eye, so to say, with respect to the climate problem. So you might have you might learn more, let's say, about climate justice or governance, because that might be not your core expertise. So again, there are people who might have a background in governance who have no knowledge, no prior knowledge about climate so much. That's the same in the other way around. If you have a meteorological background, yes, you're welcome, and you will learn more maybe about the other aspects of our master.
Yep.
Yes, definitely. Any other questions, either in the chat, or you can also have a conversation with us if you'd like. Yeah, for now, I don't see any questions. Thank you for attending this webinar, and you will receive the recording after this session. So if there's any areas that you don't remember fully, you're always welcome to rewatch this recording. And the current application round, There's a hand raised, I see. Hussein, do you have any questions? You're unmuted, so you can unmute yourself. Or it's still from the last time, possibly. Yeah, then the current application round I would like to mention is the second round of applications. So you can apply in this round until 28th of February. And if you are a scholarship dependent student, we always advise you to apply in this round because it might take longer for your scholarship to be accepted. So it's always good to apply as soon as possible if you're depending on a scholarship. And if there are no more questions.
There's a question in the chat.
Oh, I see.
Is there an age limit?
No, we welcome people from all backgrounds and all ages. It's actually very interesting to see people from each corner of their age group, I would say, and how they interact with their with each other, and their knowledge is vastly different. So I think it adds to the course in any sense. Okay, if there are no questions, yeah, I would like to thank your attendance and hope to see your application soon. And have a nice rest of